Oh dear. Anyway, attempt at an intro. So today I'm going through AQA A-level biology. It's hot today, man. 29 degrees. Yeah, I'm going through AQA A-level biology. Next week I'm going to go through OCR. So most people who are thinking about studying A-level biology, the two major exam boards that do the A-levels are AQA and OCR. You may have been doing EdExcel or IGCSE EdExcel. They do run A-level biology as well, and they got a pretty cool course as well. But I would say the most common in the students that I've met and taught over 25 years has been OCR and AQA. So today I'm going to go through an introduction to what the AQA A-level biology is all about, what you can expect from the course. I'm not actually going to start teaching any of the course today. I am from next week going to start doing weekly lessons on A-level biology. So yeah, feel free to join those. But this is to give you a taste of just really to show you what the course is actually about. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so as you can see here, um, you can go online and find your specification. It's a big fat document, but I'm going to take you through the most important bits of that specification. So AQA biology is split into 3 exam papers, and of those 3 exam papers, you've got paper 1. Ooh, just turn my volume down there. You've got paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. Now, paper 1 is a 2-hour exam, and it covers what we call topics 1 to 4. So there's 8 topics to cover in AQA A-level biology. And the first exam at the end of the 2 years, which you take in May, is on topics 1 to 4. And I'll go through what those topics are. But it's worth 91 marks, and it's 35% of your final A-level grade. 76 of the marks are short answer and then some long answer questions. So that means 1 and 2 markers and some 3 and 4 markers. Then right at the end of the first exam are 3 5-mark questions. So compared to the 6 markers you did at GCSE, easy peasy. And those 3 5 markers are very content based. They're just memory recall. So let's look at the other exams you would have to do if you're going to do AQA A-level. You've also got paper 2, which is the second exam you do for AQA. And this covers topics 5 to 8. Now, topics 5 to 8, I'm going to go through what the different topics are, the different stuff you're actually going to study in a minute. This is only a quick live tonight, like half an hour to just go through what you can expect if you choose to do A-level biology. Paper 2 is worth exactly the same amount of marks as paper 1. It's worth 91 marks. It's a 2-hour exam, and it's another 35% of the A-level. So once you've done paper 1 and 2, you've covered 70% of your A-level. Again, the same mix, 76 of those marks are short and long answer questions, so 2 or 3 markers. And then right at the end is a 15-mark section. This time it's not 3 5-mark content memory recall kind of questions. It's 1 15-mark comprehension question. So a big fat piece of writing which you've got to go through with your highlighter and identify. Most of the answers are found within that writing. So it's kind of testing your reading skills and how you can extract information. So again, different people prefer comprehension or the 15 marks on paper 1. And then finally, what's often considered the hardest paper by A-level biology students is paper 3. It's worth less marks. So it's 13 marks less. It's only worth 78 marks. It's 30% of the A-level, so it's 5% less than the other 2. 38% of the marks are structured questions including about practical techniques. So this is where they're going to ask you your core practical questions for A-level. So just like at GCSE, you had to learn those core practicals. At A-level, you've got 12 practicals to learn about in biology, and they're going to ask you questions on that throughout all 3 papers. But in paper 3, they're telling you, look, we're definitely asking you some questions on your practical techniques. There's also a 15-mark analysis on experimental data. So this is where you evaluate or justify someone's experiment. You say, oh, they didn't control this. They only did the experiment on mice. They didn't do it on humans, so it's not representative. Or you kind of rip apart their experiment. And then the bit that's unique to AQA that is not found in OCR biology or EdXL is there's a 25 mark essay, and you get the choice of two titles. Any two things could come up, two titles, and you have to write a 25 mark essay on it, and that takes 45 minutes. So you need to be trained up on how to do that as you get close to the end of your A level. Right, feel free to put any questions you have about A level biology in the chat. These are the topics. So paper one, remember I said there's 4 topics, and paper one is biological molecules. You'll have done that at GCSE, sugars, proteins, carbohydrates. Do you remember your tests, your different food tests, the Benedict's test, the Biuret test? So it's going into those molecules deeper. DNA, so you're going to learn more about DNA and the structure of it, and RNA. And also a molecule some of you may have heard of, ATP, when we talk about respiration. So, and water, which is the most important molecule for life on Earth. So you're going to learn a lot about water as well. So that there's a whole section on that. And then there's cells. So that's just expanding on what you guys have already done on cells. And then organisms exchange substances within their environment. So this is talking about the lungs, the heart, and then genetic information, variation, and relationships between organisms. So, and that's paper one, the first 4 topics. So just in case any of you want to make any comments, just to give you an idea, you might think, hey, well, we've done a lot of that already. You can see here, I've got the structure of some of those biological molecules you'll learn about in the first unit. You may be asking yourself, why is it 3.1? Really, we just look at the one. Biological molecules is unit 1. They always put a 3 there on AQA courses. Well, A-level courses anyway. It's the level of the course. So we're looking at unit 1, biological molecules, and you'll all be familiar with glucose. You remember that from photosynthesis and respiration, your C6H12O6. What you're going to learn at A level is the structure of glucose. So how are those 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens arranged? And you're going to learn there's different types of glucose. There's alpha and beta glucose. You might also recognize this molecule. Some of you might recognize this. Contains nitrogen. What do we need? Why do plants need nitrates? Well, because those minerals contain nitrogen and they need to make amino acids and proteins. So you're going to learn about amino acids and how they come together to make proteins, and how proteins can be hormones, antibodies, enzymes. You're going to learn about the structure of those in more detail. You're also going to learn about this molecule here, very, very important molecule. This is like the energy or the battery that molecule that powers life. It's ATP, it's called, and adenosine triphosphate. So you're going to learn about the structure of this molecule. This is the thing that we make during respiration, and this is the little energy carrying molecule in the body. You're going to learn, as I said, about DNA. This is the monomer of DNA with a phosphate sugar backbone and a base. This is a nucleotide. And then, of course, water, which is most important molecule for life. I probably need to move my face off of these molecules. That would probably help. Okay, so as I said, this is really just an intro to give you a bit of a taste of what A-level biology is all about. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any questions about A-level biology. As I say, I'm not actually teaching the course today, so you're going to do more about cells. You probably remember from GCSE the eukaryotic cells. So you've got your plants and your animal cells. And you remember at GCSE, there's like 5 cell structures. You've got to know your ribosomes, your cytoplasm, mitochondria, nucleus, and your cell membrane if it's an animal cell. And then the plant cell has 3 bonus structures, the chloroplast, the vacuole, and the cell wall. Nearly lost that myself. Well, there's a hell of a lot more going on in a cell than just that. So at A level, you learn about a whole nother group of organelles. There's a double the amount to learn. And you also learn about the mitochondria and the chloroplast, each one individually. You learn about what's going on inside of them. There's structures within inside those 2 organelles as well. You learn about microscopes, again, just like at GCSE, but you're going to focus more on the electron microscope of why it's so funky. That's this one here. This lady is operating. These things can cost anywhere from 200,000 to £500,000. So you won't find them in secondary schools. You probably, even if you're going to college, you're not going to find one of those. But at university, most good universities have an electron microscope in the labs. You're going to learn about the cell membrane. So here we've got the cell membrane, and we just think of it as something that lets things in and out of a cell, but it's actually made up of lots of different structures. There's loads of different things in there. So in the unit on cells, you're going to learn all of that. This person here, I don't know if it's a man or woman, I can just see their hands here. They're using something called a centrifuge, and this is how we actually study the individual bits of cells. We spin them in this machine called a centrifuge, and we can look then, we can take apart the nucleus, the mitochondria, and the chloroplast, and we can individually look at the different cell structures. And you're going to learn about how to use one of those, which is kind of like in the AQA course. That's something you don't learn about, for example, in OCR. If you take OCR, if your school chooses or your school runs OCR at A level, then you won't learn about that. But the courses are quite similar, but there's a couple of little differences. The third unit is organisms exchanging the environment. So you're going to learn about how fish respire, insects respire. Obviously, you're going to learn more about the heart and more about the lungs. And then you've got genetic information and variation. So you're going to learn about stuff you already did, like you got introduced to at GCSE, selective breeding, DNA, natural selection. And if you thought Punnett squares were bad at GCSE, well, it goes into a lot more detail in A level, but it's not actually in this unit, it's in another unit. And then in paper 2, energy transfer, so respiration, photosynthesis. You're going to do the nitrogen cycle. If you were a combined scientist, you didn't do the nitrogen cycle, but at A level, you have to do the nitrogen cycle in a lot of detail, but you're also going to look at respiration. At GCSE, we think of respiration as just C6H12O6 plus O2 goes to CO2 plus H2O, just glucose plus oxygen makes carbon dioxide and water. And what we don't realize is there's actually a whole series of chemical reactions within that reaction. So it's not as simple as just glucose gets broken down by oxygen to make carbon dioxide, water, and release ATP or energy. There's actually tons of smaller reactions that take place in that. Glucose doesn't break down straight to carbon dioxide and water. It's changed into many different substances before that, and there's many, many different reactions that go on. So you have to learn the whole series of reactions off by heart. And the same for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is not just one reaction. There's many reactions within photosynthesis taking place, enzymes, proteins, electron transport chains, and all sorts of things going on. So you're going to learn about that for your paper 2 topics. And of course, the nervous system, you're going to go into a lot more detail on the synapse, that gap between the neurons, and how the actual electrical impulses are transported along nerves. How do we create electricity in our body? Or electrical signals or impulses. How do we actually create those? And you're going to learn about how the body does that at A level. Genetics, populations is in Unit 7, and Unit 8 is the control of gene expression. So you're going to learn about how our DNA is read and how genes are translated, and our body then makes proteins. You actually learn about transcription and translation earlier on in the course, but control of gene expression is a bit more advanced. So you're going to learn about gene technology, how technology can be used to make insulin and all of that kind of stuff, how genes are cut out from one organism and placed in another organism, so genetic engineering. Also, electrophoresis is going on here. That is a process by which over here, by which you can do genetic fingerprinting, and you can use that to identify criminals, or you can use that to do paternity tests or find out, is that the real father or mother? You can do it for all sorts of things. You can do it for looking at, for separating and sequencing DNA, finding out the order of genes and bases in a protein. There's just loads and loads of things going on in this stuff about genetics in these final two topics. And also ecosystems. Again, you're going to learn about the transfer of energy through the ecosystem. A bit like pyramids of biomass and food chains, but think at a much higher level. You're going to do a lot more detail on that. So, and that's really the A-level course and the content you're going to go through for biology. It's a proper fat course. Biology is a really, really huge course with lots and lots of content, a lot more than chemistry or physics. However, conceptually, I would say biology is easier conceptually, but exam-wise, the facts are in that biology is a much harder A-level than chemistry and physics when it comes to exam results. So I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. Okay, this is just a list of skills that you'll be assessed on if you take biology, practical skills you'll be assessed on. So they've got the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So if you look at H, it says, can you safely and ethically use organisms to measure plant or animal responses? So for instance, that's looking at like wood lice, shining a light on them and seeing, do they like to go towards the light or away from the light? And can you do that ethically and safely with those organisms? And so each of these skills you have to have ticked off throughout the course. Now, you're not actually graded on them. So it's not like, ooh, I did better than that person. You're not going to score marks for that. But every single student does have to complete all of these, and there has to be documentation to show they've completed all of these. So the teacher will do that on your course. Throughout the course, you will do a bunch of practicals, and the practicals that you have to carry out to cover all these different targets, okay, are here. These are called required activities, sometimes called PAGs. I think they're practical assessed groups is what it stands for. A bit weird, but you've got these kind of groups of targets that we saw on the previous page that you can complete with each practical. So with each of these practicals, they cover all those different skills you need. So one of them is to investigate enzymes, this first one here. So you'll have to do an enzyme investigation. And then down here, number 7, every student will have to have carried out chromatography, okay, to investigate stuff about plants. So you normally isolate chlorophyll or another pigment from the plant in that practical. So you have to cover all 12 of these practicals, but you don't have to worry like, oh, did I get an A, a B, or C? You just do the practical and it's documented whether you did the skill well enough to cover it or not. And essentially, someone comes in from AQA and they come in and they look through the documents, not every year, but they come every now and then just to make sure the school are actually teaching them, because there's no grading which they send off to the exam board. So it's either the kids have done it or they haven't. The students have met the targets or they haven't. So they really check up on the school about that. Now, these practicals do come up in the exams as questions. So you could be asked, how do you carry out chromatography? And how would you do it using chlorophyll? And so then you would have to be able to say that all off the top of your head, memory recall. So you do have to learn all those practicals. Now, maths, those of you that really, really, really hate maths, maths makes up 10% of your A-level biology grade. So a lot of mental maths in A-level biology. So 26 marks out of the whole A-level course are going to be on mental maths, and that includes handling data. And on this page, it's got all the sorts of things you've got to be able to carry out: draw scatter diagrams, carry out statistical tests. Can you calculate a median, a mode, or a mean? Can you understand probability? You've then got algebra. So can you rearrange formulas? Can you use log numbers? Do you know how to, well, you'll learn on your course if you don't know already how to do that in maths, but how to turn big numbers into, like, use the log 10 scale and things like that. And the geometry and trigonometry. So yeah, you might have to work out the surface area of a circle or a sphere or a cylinder or the volume of a cylinder and those kind of things. So you'll have to have those math skills and graph skills to be able to draw tangents, which some of you could do at GCSE in your GCSE maths and things like that. Can you describe relationships and then explain relationships? Correlations, causal effects. You'll be looking at all of these sorts of things. So there's a bit of maths in there as well. And also, as I said, this is only a half an hour little live just to introduce the A level and what you got to do. I'm actually going to start teaching this next week. The course, I'm going to do one lesson a week. So on A level biology. So you're welcome to join that, by the way. I'm also going to do an intro for OCR, A-level biology as well, where I do the same thing. It's just a half an hour, me explaining what the course entails. So you get an idea, you know, you might say, boy, I don't fancy doing that. Okay, so, or you might say, yeah, that sounds like it's for me. So you've got these things called AO1, AO2, and AO3. Now, just butchered that, but AO1, AO2, and AO3, essentially translating what that nonsense means to you guys is that you have to be assessed in your exams in A-level biology. And this is from like the government, Ofqual, which regulate the A-levels. So whether you're doing OCR A-level biology, EdXL, or AQA, those A-levels have to contain these elements called AO1 or assessment objectives. 1, 2, and 3. Now, assessment objective 1 is basically testing your subject. I would say it's subject knowledge. So you know when you're revising your revision guide and you were preparing for GCSE, how well did you know the content? A third of the course, roughly, to like maybe 40% of the course or 50% is just content. So you've just got to know, like, do you know everything? Have you memorized it all? That's AO1. Now, just so that people, why do the government have to regulate it? Well, I could start an A-level, I could start a company and produce an A-level, which was just pure content. You didn't have to do any lateral thinking, any reading of graphs, any concluding, evaluating, or justifying. So essentially, in order to make sure that the students that leave A-level who are going on to become doctors or going to work in the field in biology or work for pharmaceutical companies, that they're all skilled, they need to ensure that each A-level covers these different skill sets, these different assessment objectives. So I would describe this, rather than having to interpret what that means, I would say that AO1 is subject knowledge. And the way they say it is to demonstrate knowledge and understanding of scientific ideas, processes, techniques, and procedures. Basically, your subject knowledge. And then AO2 is applying your subject knowledge. And you might say, well, what is application of your subject knowledge? So if you think of enzymes, which you did at GCSE, and you think, okay, what's your knowledge on enzymes? You can probably all tell me, oh, enzymes have an active site. They fit like a lock and key with a substrate. That's subject knowledge. But if I get you to interpret a graph and say, oh, why did the graph go down? Explain why the graph's going down after 40 degrees. And you say, the enzymes have denatured. Now you're applying your subject knowledge. I've not asked you, tell me what denaturing of an enzyme is. You're having to spot something in a question and then apply your subject knowledge. So that's application. So a third of the course is going to be, or your assessment is going to be you applying your knowledge. And then the last one, AO3, is probably the one people hate the most, this learning objective or assessment objective. And this is when you do the questions that are like evaluating, justifying, and concluding. So normally when you're looking at somebody else's work and they'll say, for 6 marks, this person has said, if you drink tea every morning, your brain grows bigger. If you drink a nice cup of PG Tips every morning, your brain grows bigger. Evaluate their conclusion, and you'll have a load of you'll have a table, a graph, a load of writing about what they did in their experiment, and you'll have to read through it and pull up the things for their experiment and saying, yes, they have got this right, but then you have to pull up a load of things to say, hold on a minute, this doesn't make sense. They've not done this. They only used a small number of people. They only used males. They didn't use females as well. And their statement applies to everybody. So you go through and destroy their kind of experiment as well as finding things for it. So that's AO3, and evaluating, justifying. People find that a lot harder, and that's a good area where you can gain marks in biology because people don't like that so much. So going on, just finishing up here, got 5 minutes left. So finishing up, in your A level, if you take AQA, if your school run AQA, then paper 1, 91 marks, paper 2, 91 marks, paper 3, 78 marks. So the total marks is 260 marks. Okay, so why do I say that A-level biology is a hard subject? Well, I say it because of the grade boundaries. But that's, I mean, there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that, why their grade boundaries are low. But here's the grade boundaries for AQA from 2019. So this is before COVID. We can't trust the grade boundaries totally through COVID because they gave students information about the exams, and students had suffered from not missing a lot of school and stuff. So going back to when COVID didn't exist, or did it? Well, going back to before COVID, you can see here 260 is the maximum marks. If you scored 178, and if I pull out a 178 and divide it by 260, I'm going to get 68%, 68.5%. And so if you get 69%, you're getting an A star. Okay, and that's pretty much guaranteed. If you go down here, I think this is like 149 out of 260 to get an A. So that's pretty good. Like, that's 57% gets you an A. Now, that's pretty good. You'll need A's and A stars if you want to study medicine at a top university or you want to do a top course. But you can rest assured in biology, you'll only need 57% for an A and 69% for an A star. So, yeah, that tells you that there's a lot of people that struggle with biology A level compared to chemistry A level, where you probably need between 82 and 84% to get an A star, maybe in some years 85% to get an A star. And to get an A, you'll need in the 70s. You might need 75% to get an A. So chemistry, biology is like 10% lower grade boundaries, which means people do worse in biology than chemistry. Now, there could be two reasons for that. Maybe biology is harder because you've got so much content to memorize, or maybe it's just that really, really clever students take chemistry A level, and if you dare to take chemistry A level, you're up against all the really super clever students in the country, and so they push the grade boundaries up. So that's another reason why. But I've always noticed that the chemistry grade boundary is good, and that's for all exam boards. It's a good 10% higher than biology. Right, resources, things that you might need if you're going to be studying A-level AQA biology. You've got the old CGP is useful. A lot of schools will use this big fat Oxford book. And of course, the AQA website has all the past papers. It's got examiner's notes. So just Googling AQA A-level biology. If you're doing OCR, you just Google OCR A-level biology. That will bring up all the past papers, and you've got everything there, really. You guys are prepared for GCSE, so you know what you've got to do. Right, realistically, this is me being realistic as to whether you should take A-level biology. It depends what outcome you want. If you're somebody who says, I want to get an A or an A star in A-level biology, right? If you assume most students in the country take 3 A levels, okay, you will get from your school 5 hours a week per A level of teacher time in your college or your school. So if you're studying 3 A levels, which is the average that most students in the country study when they go on to sixth form and study A levels, then you're doing 15 hours of lessons a week. Hang on, that's a bit different than GCSE, right? GCSE, you had 25 hours a week of study. So what you'll notice from the sixth formers in your school, if you have them, is that they have what's called free periods or study periods. So if you're taking 3 A-levels, you're going to have 10 hours a week where you're in school, but you don't have a lesson. So you go to what's called the sixth form study room, and you can chat with your mates about the football or about what you saw on TV last night or about what the latest song is. But how much studying should you be doing? Well, if you're doing 4 A-levels, you're one of the crazy people that does that. Then you've only got 5 hours of free time. And if you're doing 5 A-levels, you don't meet many people ever that are doing 5, then you've got no free time at all. But I would say 100% you should be doing 5 hours per A-level outside of school, outside of the lessons that you have per A-level a week. So for biology, if I'm just talking about biology, if you're doing biology A-level, you want an A or an A star, you have to do 5 hours per week of independent study. And I've not had a student that I've taught that hasn't done that. Basically, any student that's put 5 hours a week in from September when they start the course for A-level biology, they've got an A or A star, because A-level biology is about hard work and consistency. Doesn't matter how clever you are, and I've taught a lot of clever kids who were a bit lazy and didn't do that. You can't catch up when it comes to the second year if you've not put the groundwork in, because the content keeps coming. So every lesson you're learning 20 new keywords, more content. So if you've been lazy for 3 months or 4 months and you've not been doing any extra work outside of school to memorize the content, even if you've understood it, it's going to get on top of you and it's going to be too much. So if you want an A or A star, you've got to put 5 hours in. So whether you do 2 hours on a Saturday and 1 hour, 3 days a week after school of revision, making flashcards, brainstorming, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, you've got study time in school. If you used all 10 hours for study, but that's going to be unrealistic. You're going to get caught up chatting to friends for a few of those hours. But yeah, so I'll guarantee you an A if you can do 5 hours of extra study on top. The extra study is on top of any homework you get from your teacher. So your teacher might be giving you an hour and a half or 2 hours of homework a week for biology A-level. I would still be saying you need to do 5 hours of your own study a week if you want to guarantee yourself an A or A star. Cool. Right. So if you're not prepared to do that, you won't be successful. If you just do all the work in class and your homework without any independent study, you'll probably struggle to get above a C. If you just memorize, now if you memorize the entire book, that's only going to get you a C in terms of like in the exams. So you'll need to practice all the techniques, evaluating, essay writing, all those other techniques. So that's why I say you need to do so much time. All right, guys, I'm actually going to finish there because this is just a quick half an hour thing. Now, next week, Tuesday evening, I'm going to be doing my first A-level lesson on AQA biology. So it's going to be a 1 hour live stream. You can come on and enter the chat. And yeah, I'm going to be working through the first lesson for AQA biology. I'm also going to be doing chemistry as well from the week after. But I'm going to do one of these boring half an hour chats about the course, just so you know what the course is about and what to expect. All right, guys. So take care, and I will see you if I see you on Tuesday.